Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Cristiana.
And I'm Nick. This is our first home in Granville, New York. And come on in, we'll give you a tour.
Welcome to our newest Homeworthy series called Our First Home, where we meet young lovebirds who are building their first nest together.
Now we're the Taylors.
We're married.
These couples have both charming love stories and lovely homes.
It just feels great to be not only building a home, but building a life together.
So prepare to be swept off your feet by these incredible pairs and the places they call home. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. To shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy episodes, be sure to check out the product links below for amazing furniture, accessories, and more.
I'm Cristiana Peña, and I work in real estate marketing.
And my name's Nick Porter, and I work in PR and social media.
So we live in Granville, New York, which is way, way, way upstate. When people down in New York City say they're going upstate and they're going like 20 minutes, an hour out of the city, this is truly upstate. We are about an hour and a half northeast of Albany, which is about 45 minutes from Saratoga Springs, which are just two cities that people might be familiar with. We're right on the border with Vermont. You could throw a stone and the Green Mountains are right over there. Granville is a small little town that is known as the colored slate capital of the world.
Yep.
You think of slate, you usually just think of like gray tones, but there's purples and reds and kind of greenish blues. It's really beautiful, and that is really what got Granville its start, were all these slate quarries. So when you drive around, you still see a lot of that history and heritage. Our property is just this little postage stamp size lot, and there are two buildings on it actually, but the one that drew us to this property is where we're sitting right now, inside this historic church, which was founded in
1780.
Well, the congregation was founded in 1782, and then the building was built in 1793 as the first church of Granville. It's crazy to think that this building has that kind of longevity and history in this community, and it's been really exciting as we've been, telling people that we're here and people have seen us doing work. People say, oh, we used to go to Sunday school in that church, or my uncle got married in that church. Those stories are exciting. Unfortunately, not too many people seem to have photographs of that so far.
People come by, they never bring pictures.
Yeah. Right next to the church is a small little cottage, which was the reason that we could really make this move and this property work. We could live in the cottage while we've been doing renovations here in the church. We looked at a bunch of other properties, especially a lot of other churches all over New York State and some in New Jersey when we were thinking about this move. And they all had the same problems of, no heat, no water, no services of any kind, but none of them then had like that auxiliary structure where we could live and make it make sense to move while we were doing it. But this one did, so it just really stood out in that big way. We've been together something like 7 years, give or take. And we met at work. We started out just working on projects together and friendship, and then it grew into more, and now here we are.
Our first date's a little indeterminate because we started out as friends. But I think the first date was probably, I like photography and went to a Wolfgang Tillman show in Midtown. And I think it was her idea, so that seemed like a good basis to start things on.
It was nice because it was like seeing Nick in his element, like the thing that inspires him, because we spend so much time at work just doing work things. So getting to see like how this artwork and this photography really lit him up was really exciting.
Welcome to our church's vestibule.
Technical term being?
The narthex.
There you go.
It's the lightest part of the church. It's a transition space, and it's always in transition, as you can see. It's a little unfinished, but
we're working on it.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah. So these huge windows let in so much natural light. So this is where all of my plants live. Everyone is thriving. We've also used it as a chance to feature some of Nick's own photography. So it's kind of a little like transitional gallery.
Sort of testing it out with these giant prints that we printed for a party, and then, we think it looks pretty good, so we'll probably do more of them or do better ones or what have you.
change them out over time. But they're fun
Change
because
them out, yeah.
these photos are taken in California, in Long Beach, where Nick's family lives. So it's also kind of nice every time he comes in to have this fun little reminder of like back home.
Yeah, it's a reminder of the best coast.
Okay, sure.
What else?
Well, and then for me, two of the things that are really special to me in this room are actually above us, the vintage Murano chandelier. That was actually a birthday present to me, I think when I turned like 38 or 37. I had mentioned, I was in a vintage shop in Brooklyn with a friend, and very much in passing said, that's a lovely chandelier. I like it so much. And then fast forward like a year later, she had gotten a dozen or so friends all together to pitch in and buy me this incredible chandelier that I never would have splurged on myself, but all these people came together. So I just felt so loved and felt so appreciated by such a great group of people. So the chandelier is really important. And then also above us, over the main doorway in the transom space, is a piece of stained glass that my father made. My parents are both very crafty. You'll see some work by my mom inside the sanctuary, but this piece here, my father produced for the renovation as part of us being featured on Who's Afraid of a Cheap Old House. And so it's such a great reminder of my family as well.
All right, so that's the vestibule, and let's head on into the sanctuary.
Welcome to our sanctuary. This is basically our home. It's one big 2,000 square foot room that's, divided out into zones, but it's this one big, beautiful space. It's kind of like if you ever dreamed of living in a loft in the city, but that was never financially in the cards, you could just live in a converted church in Granville.
21-foot ceilings?
22.
So if you ever feel really anxious in the other building, you can come over here and kind of like calm down a little bit.
You come into the vestibule, you can go left or right through either of the doors, and immediately you were just drawn right to the center of the sanctuary with this incredible, incredible chandelier. It is a handmade piece that actually was made not too far from us, just over the border from New York in Vermont in West Rupert by a company called Authentic Designs. And originally, when we were doing the initial renovation and restoration as part of the HGTV production with Who's Afraid of a Cheap Old House, they had very generously lent the chandelier. But once it was here, we were just like,
Yeah, couldn't leave.
it's the most beautiful thing, and it's handmade, so the opportunity to support this company that is still so committed to craftsmanship and quality is just really important to us. And it just, like, yeah, you walk in and you can't deny, it just like beckons you to this space.
Yep.
Which is why we decided to we really wanted the heart of this sanctuary space to be this kind of like melty lounge area. And the couch is a saga unto itself, for sure, in terms of how we finally landed on this couch. To Nick's dismay, I went through a couch phase.
Yeah, we collected many couches.
Oh, I like that you changed that to we, because that's fair.
Well, I was definitely involved, I remember, with many U-Hauls.
Yeah.
And some of them are still downstairs, so
Yeah, that's,
if anyone wants any.
yeah, we have a couple of couches
Dealership.
that need a home. But the challenge with such a big space is we needed some big furniture pieces. Everything being kind of normal scale for your traditional residential home just would feel too small in this big room. And the couch, wanting it to anchor the central area like we wanted, it was really important that we had a couch that felt like it had some like size and presence to it. And I don't know, we looked for at least a year, if not more, new companies, lots of vintage all over the country, and we're finding lots of options, of course, but everything was just so pricey, and we just didn't have an endless budget to work with. But diligence and patience paid off, right?
Obsessive searching, yeah.
I mean, call it what you want.
She's doing that all the time anyway, so.
So we found a vintage shop in Connecticut called Refill Vintage that had this insane, I want to say it's from the 70s, this insane, really buttery, soft, I don't know if it's performance, suede. I don't think so. I don't really know, but it is beautiful. And each of the pieces are disconnected. They're on casters, so it's endlessly, configurable, I guess. We can, as we change how we want to use the space, or just as we flex with, if we're having people over and we want to set it up differently, whatever the case may be, this will be able to move and change with us. Almost 100% of the rugs in here are from the same source, this incredible auction website called Auction Ninja. When I tell you what I paid for this rug, you're gonna want to just come to our house and like smack us across the face, because this rug, actually the rug, first I'll tell you, the rug under the rug, the jute rug that is actually 2 rugs that have been merged
Biggest
together.
rug I've ever seen in my life.
This insane rug that just like totally fills the center of our house. I got it on Auction Ninja at an estate sale for $90. $90. Like, that's insane. That's insane. I mean, it's crazy. So that's the jute rug, and then this beautiful rug with all these red and like hints of blue tones on top of it. I think I paid $150 for. Like, these prices are crazy. I sound like a used car salesman, but it's crazy because we have such this huge space that we need to be really thoughtful and economical about how we fill it, but we don't want to sacrifice style and beauty and all of those other things. So you'll hear Auction Ninja a lot if you ask me about where we got our rugs from, but that's where this beautiful red rug came. And the coffee table was actually sourced by the design team for Who's Afraid of a Cheap Old House. Jen Salvamini was the lead designer for that. And I don't know for sure. I think she sourced this secondhand from Apartment Deco, maybe, but I'm not sure. But anyway, this was sourced secondhand, but by the design production team. So I don't know too much about it, but it's nice because even though it's big and has a lot of heft to it, the glass being transparent means that it doesn't feel like the center of the room is like, this big block. It still feels nice and light and airy, I think.
Yeah, it does. This area is kind of multi-purpose. I feel like we do a little bit of everything in here. Working in here is nice. When you need a relaxed vibe for work.
Yeah.
She likes to do puzzles.
True.
Mostly we watch movies in here. We have a projector that sits behind us and projects on a screen in front of us. So
Yeah.
kind of a home theater experience.
I mean, it's
What
pretty
else?
incredible. I mean, at night when this entire room is dark and you just have this big screen and this projector in this huge space, it can be very like atmospheric.
Yeah, we had a watch party for the show that we were on, and it worked out well. There was like 40 people in here, and it was perfectly comfortable. So when I first walked into this church, I think my reaction was a mix of excitement and horror. It was damp, wet. There was a giant hole in the floor. I was excited about having something like this, but it was really hard to imagine us finishing it off. So that was my conflicted first feelings walking in.
I mean, when I first walked in, yes, I was kind of like starry-eyed and oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I mean, the height of the space, the windows, everything just was grand and had this incredible scale to it, which I found incredibly inspiring. But Nick's right, like the hole in the floor took up like a quarter of the space. It was a huge hole in the floor, which we don't know for sure if this is correct, but we were told that one of the previous potential owners or tenants before us was a puppet theater, and so they had taken the floorboards up in that area with the intention of putting whatever mechanics you need to operate a puppet theater, and then I guess it didn't happen, but they left the floor.
And of course, the hole in the floor ended up being the least of our problems. So.
Well, that's the thing.
Black mold was probably a lot.
Yeah, Nick
problem?
kept pointing out like, I think we have a mold issue, and it's not that I'm impractical, but I was just like, yeah, that's fine, it's fine, mold. And he just kept saying like, no, I think we really have a mold issue on our hands. And then when it finally came around to addressing that, it was a pretty significant mold issue. But at the time when we were just walking into the space, I think it was just kind of equal parts like awe and a little bit of intimidation because it's a non-traditional space. And so thinking about, yes, you can put a kitchen in here, but how do you do that? And where do you do that? And how do you add like a bathroom? And how do you make it feel like a home? I don't think we were fully, jumping that far ahead, but it was definitely in our minds and weighing on us.
I was trying to compartmentalize and just
Yeah.
do one thing at a time. Well, let's show you the kitchen now.
It's kind of hard to miss it. It's this
behind
incredible space anchored by this beautiful, beautiful mural. So it's funny that we have this incredible, very enviable kitchen now because before we moved here, our apartment in Brooklyn, our kitchen was like maybe the size of this tiny section of counter. And now we have this incredibly designed, really beautiful space to really stretch our legs and I guess become the chefs we never even knew we were meant to be. But the focal point for sure is this insane, beautiful, beautiful mural. It's
Yes,
actually
wallpaper mural.
It's wallpaper. It's by a company called Fine and Dandy. And it actually, I think, came from talking with the designer about Nick's love of photography and the fact that he does photography.
Yeah, it's supposed to mimic like 19th century photographic techniques. I mean, obviously it's the first thing everyone sees when they come in, and it completely ties the room together. So
Yeah.
it's hugely important. I'm not sure what would be there if it wasn't there.
This niche, this would have originally been where like the altar, the pulpit would have been for the church. This was also
And the hole.
where the hole was. So when we first came to visit the church, this was a hole. You could not stand here.
Caution tape and everything.
Yeah, keep out signs. It's crazy to think how far it's come. But when you walk in, I mean, this is the first thing that greets you, and it just is like the most incredible statement. And it's mirrored by this other niche on the opposite side of the room. And I think the fact that the other niche where you'll see my collection of Blue Boy reproductions, that is very much like a gallery wall. But when you see that, the idea that this would have also been another gallery wall, I think you just know that it would have just been too noisy and just like too cluttery. So having the guts, I think, to make such a huge design statement, I don't know if I would have ever had the guts to do that, but I'm so glad that somebody else had the vision and the authority to do that on our behalf, because I couldn't be more happy with what she did.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah, but also, so the church is from the late 1700s, but there were renovations and updates in the Victorian era around the 1860s, and so this sepia tone aesthetic is meant to also speak to kind of that Victorian history of Victorians being naturalists and this kind of like exploration of photography. I don't know why, but I kind of have an obsession with multiples, which I think is kind of Nick shares when it comes to his photography in a way, but you'll see as we kind of walk around that it's like, I'll find this one glass pear out in the wild and I'll think it's lovely and I'll get it. And then maybe a couple of weeks or months later, I'll see another and I'll just think to myself, like, this is fate. I'm meant to have this pear. And so suddenly I have 5.
It's the cycle. You see this in antique stores a lot. Life goes on, people get older and they start getting a little kookier.
Yeah.
And then they collect hundreds of certain things.
So you'll see, like, so I've got these multiple pears. I've got my ridiculous collection of Blue Boys. I have collections of these porcelain busts. I have these weird lobster wine decanters. Like, I don't need these things. And I definitely don't need 10 of them or 5 of them or 35 of them. But it's like, once you get into it, you kind of can't stop yourself. And it just sparks this incredible sense of joy and this like discovery every single time. And we have a fun little collection of vintage cups and containers and teapots and things. So like, you know, some of the things that are favorites, like I love these vintage little Pyrex that come in a variety of colors. Like, these are so fun, and you see them all over, and I know they can be really expensive, but we're just collecting them for fun. So it's like, if I find one for $1, like, why not? These ones here, I really love. They're not that old, but the reason I love them is because we're not that far from Bennington, Vermont. It's about an hour away. And this is Bennington pottery, which I don't pretend to know a whole lot about like how this style developed, but this is signature of Bennington Pottery Works. So to have a little set like this just feels like very connected to the area where we live. Similarly, this guy, and actually he is a friend, this great little dish that I haven't really yet figured out what I want to use this one for. But these, actually technically, this is Nick's.
Thank you. This came from Shackleton Thomas, which is a pottery company in Woodstock, Vermont?
That's a lie.
No, it's in Vermont. It's
sort
of close by.
Yeah, in Vermont. They are incredible. They hosted us actually. The real estate marketing website that I work for, Circa Old Houses, we had like a little staff kind of retreat a couple years ago to Vermont, and the Shackleton Thomas folks were incredibly welcoming and invited us in for a wood shop tour. But attached to the Shackleton Thomas wood shop, Charlie Shackleton, his wife Miranda, has her own pottery that like, this is really, I mean, it's crazy. I, to be fair, did not necessarily know this going in, but like, presidents have been gifted Miranda's pottery.
Made pottery for all manner of world leaders.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so
I've heard.
Yeah, so Nick has this mug from that visit, and then when we had our kind of housewarming party, they were so sweet. They gave us this adorable little, this kind of rabbit motif is very signature of Miranda's work, but they gave us this great little dish to welcome us home. So these are really meaningful to us as well. So this little kind of pearlescent, iridescent teapot is old, and it's from my grandmother. And my grandmother told me that the reason it was so special to her is that when she was a little girl growing up, and when she would come home from school in the winter time, I'm from South Dakota originally, so you can imagine winter, it's very cold. She's a small child coming home. Her mother would make her little pots of hot chocolate to warm up like after school. And so when she told me this, I was like, I really need this in my home. So I don't use it too often because it just feels very special, but I like having it out because every time I see it just kind of on the shelf, makes me think of home. This pot, these little feet, and this little guy here, this little kind of like Vitpost is from our friends at Quitner, which is actually south of us in the Hudson Valley in Germantown. They have antiques and they support local makers. And so same, when we had our housewarming party, they were very kind and gave us this beautiful pot with these lovely little feet. And I just haven't decided yet what is kind of worthy to be in this little pot. But this little dish has migrated around all over this, kind of serving a function, like just quickly throw things in it sometimes, but it's just like this beautiful speckleware that we just love.
Cristiana also has an affinity for small and large pieces of marble.
True fact.
You'll see a lot of those around.
Yes, so this was
Another
actually,
antique store collection.
This was a housewarming gift to me by my coworker, my colleague, Elizabeth Finkelstein, who is the co-founder, co-owner of Circa Old Houses and its sister account that you might be familiar with, Cheap Old Houses, co-host of the show we were just on. So her and her mother, Gail, shout out to Gail, they knew that I have this weird affinity for just like beautiful pieces of like stone slabs. Like we've got this one here. I have one like in a windowsill. I've got one in the vestibule under a plant. I've got this beautiful like Indian red marble brick here. Like I don't know what I'm doing with them,
There's
but
a column over there.
but they're beautiful and they just have this incredible texture and color and you know like this sense of connectedness because they're just this natural material. Like they're just stunning. How could you? What's not to like? So for my 40th birthday, Nick treated me to a couple of days of just antiquing anywhere you want to go. Not only would he take me, but he would go in the store and he would have a smile on his entire time and be very like into it, which is not always the case.
Yeah, so on the way out of town, I went through Rutland, Vermont, and I forget what the store is called, small antique store.
Yeah.
I smilingly and begrudgingly went in, and we found this radio.
But you were rewarded. See, like this is why you go because you never know.
This is a good find.
Well, and also this goes to show like another example of like just random piece of stone. Like this is beautiful, right? Like I don't know, like it's good. It serves a purpose. So yeah.
So it's an antique radio. It's got a record player in it. I think it was $50.
Careful.
It works. It works fine.
You can open it more. So actually, yeah. This side just holds the records. This side has the mechanics of it going on, but it works perfectly. Yeah, it was like $100.
That was one of those shocking moments where we were like, "How much is this?" And the guy was like, "50."
Yeah.
And our mouths were kind of agape, and we're like, "We'll take it, I guess."
Yeah, it is Magnavox. Like we said, works perfectly. The record works. The radio works. The radio is like I'm still trying to figure out necessarily like the balance of everything.
We'll get there.
Yeah, but it's just like a beautiful piece that. Like we needed a console, we needed something behind the couch, and we'd been thinking of like small bookcases or something, and who knows, like we might still, this has moved around several times, and right now it really feels at home here. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show, like we didn't go searching for this vintage radio console, but like it found us. It drew us to it.
When we started wanting to look at houses, I think we started normally, but then Cristiana has an obsession with old structures, especially unorthodox ones, so it quickly became a search for only a church.
You think about buying real estate, especially when it's your first home and we don't know what we're doing and we're learning about this process of appraisals and comparable properties. And there's really no such thing as a comp to a 1793, 200-plus-year-old church. Like there's just no comps. And so finding the financing to make it happen was really challenging and a couple of other kind of stumbling blocks along the way. But then it kind of all at the last minute, kind of all tied up and
yeah, it
worked.
was probably a year from when we first looked at it to when we closed. So that's the kitchen area, and let's move on to the dining area over here behind you.
Which absolutely always looks like this. It always is set like this.
It's always it's like Thanksgiving dinner's about to happen, but with donuts.
No, I mean, this was really fun to set the table like this because, I mean, it's really just the two of us for the most part, even though we love to have people over and we do love to entertain, we're still like doing a lot of things to be prepared to really do that. But you know, we have just like a mix of like new and old, like some beautiful like plates from companies like Green Row, but then like also some vintage stuff, lots of vintage like depression glass. I think I got these on like 2 years ago. Like a bunch of my like old house and like vintage friends, like 8 of us had this kind of like girls weekend in Connecticut antiquing, and I think I got these for like $25 or something. They are massive, like they're so heavy, they're so beautiful. One of the things that you find throughout our house is that there's like just eras and styles are just like commingling and kind of all kind of in the sauce together, and the table and chairs are a great example of that. Whereas, you know, our sofa is very mid-century, well, not mid-century, but 1970s and vintage in that direction. These beautiful handmade chairs, these are Windsor chairs, and they were sourced, or they were really the brainchild of Elizabeth from Cheap Old Houses. She saw these and thought that they'd be a great way to add some kind of history and tradition and craft to the space. And they're stunning. They are so beautiful, and they really go well. This table is Secondhand from Kayo, which is a really great website if you're looking to have like high quality stuff and you don't want to necessarily have to pay full price. So they really work beautifully together. Yeah, and then I mean all the other things like I was saying, like it's a mix of like new and vintage, and it all just kind of is commingling together. And you're dining in the shadow of these beautiful kids right here. So it's just like with what I was saying, like with the pears, or when people ask me why I collect Blue Boy, like why do I collect these?
The answer is I don't know.
I don't know either though. It's just that it always kind of starts the same, where you're out in your vintage shopping, you're antiquing, and you see them and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. And it just kind of, it registers in your brain and you go on. And then the next shop you see them again. And then the next shop you see them again. And then you just start to think about how these things, there are so many of them because at a certain point in time, they were popular in American culture to have them in your home because it said something about your awareness of culture and style and history and like wanting to feel connected to that. But then at a certain point, everyone just like concurrently decided we're past that. So they just all get flung out into the world to vintage and antique shops for people like me to find them. And I just kept finding them over and over. And so I couldn't stop collecting them, and I just thought that the repetition of them, especially in this big space, added some interesting kind of texture without being like too loud and over the top. So now they get to attend all of our dinner parties. Why not?
Noticing a pattern.
Yeah. So Nick's favorite thing
The
in the
aforementioned
house.
piano.
Yes. Do you want to tell them how much we paid for it?
We paid $0?
We paid $10.
We paid $10 for it.
$10.
We picked it up in Boston by ourselves.
Well, first.
Well, we were supposed to be by ourselves.
Well, so first, found this at an auction. Again, this was at Auction Ninja for $10. Nick had said, you know, if I ever found a piano, he'd be interested in one. And I was like, I could make this happen.
I was looking for a stand-up piano or something small. We went to Boston, pick it up, tried bringing it down the stairs with like back straps, and my back broke immediately. And so the owners ended up having to help us. Their neighbors had to help us. So
it was quite a sight.
I'm sure they like us a lot. But
and then,
we ended up getting it down
yeah.
and in and here.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Well, and then we got home and it sat in our driveway in the U-Haul for like 2 days so that we could just recover. And then our friends, Trisha and Bobby, who have an incredible handyman service here in town, they helped us move it in, put it in place. And it was funny because after all that, like I always joke to people that like this piano was kind of like our IKEA. Like, you know how like couples, like you'll go to IKEA and like you'll start arguing about whatever. That was this for us. Like, I feel like this like took our relationship like to the brink, you know, because it was just like so incredibly difficult.
Well, it takes a village.
Yeah.
Forced against their will to move a piano.
Well, and then after all of that, we moved it into place, and then we contacted a tuner to come and tune it. And the first thing he says, he comes in, he's got all his stuff laid out, and he's testing it. And he's like, before I even get started, I have to tell you, like, this is probably not even worth tuning. Like, it's not really great. And we were like, please don't tell us that. We can't bear to move this thing out. It was too traumatic. It has to work. It has to stay. And the longer he kind of played around with it, he was like,
It's
well,
fine. He was being dramatic.
well, he was just like, as long as you're not trying to have like concerts and like high quality thing. Like we're like, no, this is just something for us to kind of like we've both played piano at different points in our lives. This is just kind of a fun thing for us to kind of get back into. And then actually just the other day, Nick a while ago had said that he would love to find a metronome to go with the piano. And you can get them online, like you can get them on Etsy, you can get them on eBay, all over the place. And ones in good condition can be pretty pricey. And I just happened to be at our town little antique shop the other day, just looking, because one never knows. And I found this little guy for $25. And he works beautifully. So whenever Nick's ready to start his lessons, and wait, what did you learn? Is like when you move this center part down, that quickens it, I believe. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful object.
Yeah. So complementing or kind of setting the backdrop for the piano, we have 2 lobster-shaped wine decanters to celebrate the sesquicentennial of the state of Maine, because why wouldn't you have 2? But then on the wall here, as much as we love vintage, I mean, I think our taste is incredibly eclectic, and a lot of this is primarily my art, and a lot of it is obviously not the same kind of like era of like the rugs and the piano and the Windsor chairs. It's much more contemporary. These 2 pieces are vintage that I got when I was still living in Brooklyn. This one is from Dobbin Street Vintage. It's this like great kind of French cyclist. This op art is from a place called Pippin Vintage, also in the city. And then these 3 little kind of animals that say objet d'art are by this really great artist that Nick and I met when we were doing.
We wrote an article on him.
Yeah, we wrote an article for Untapped, which is a website about like arts and culture. He lives in Providence now.
He lives in Providence now, yeah.
Oh, he was in New Rochelle at the time. But he does this he just does this really beautiful, expressive art. We love his stuff so much. And so I've always told him that as he creates more of these particular series, that I have the right of first refusal, because I love them so much.
He's extremely prolific. He puts stuff out like every day, and a lot of it is just really good.
Yeah. But then even like I love Miro, and actually the reason that these 2 lithographs are important and valuable to me kind of emotionally and sentimentally is because when I was a junior to senior year in college, I studied abroad for a year in Paris, and I interned at the Paris Gallery of Galerie Mecque, which represented Miro. So these 2 pieces, like I love Miro, you'll see his books all throughout our house. And so these 2 pieces are especially meaningful to me because they were the 2 pieces that I was gifted at the end of my internship, or stage, as they say.
Fancy.
En français. And then this is by an artist, Blonda. You can follow her online. I love her work too, but you can see it kind of all fits into a similar kind of style. This is incredibly important to me because this is my cat, Tom, who moved with us from the city to Granville and then unfortunately passed away not long after. But this picture is drawn by my godson, Ambrose, who lives in Saratoga, very close to us. So that is very meaningful to me. And then this long piece here is Niagara Falls, because we go to Buffalo and kind of the Niagara area kind of regularly because there are some bands out that way that Nick has been following for a long time. So whenever we go out there, we usually try to check out the falls. So everything kind of has a little story and piece of meaning behind it. Our style, to be fair, I mean, I will admit that a lot of what is happening right now, a lot of it stems from the things that we brought with us from the city, a lot of which was mine. But a lot of our style, our shared style though, is very vintage, secondhand. Nick has a lot of art prints and different photography pieces that he's collected over time. And we have, I think, a lot of things that we've collected together that represent like places we've traveled, where we're from. So I think that it's nice to be able to look at the things in our home and everything kind of has a memory attached to it. Like, oh, remember we bought that when you were visiting my family in South Dakota for the first time, and you know, or we bought that when we were visiting your sister in Ecuador. Like, I mean, everything kind of has a story attached to it. Nothing is kind of haphazardly purchased, I think.
Cristiana's very passionate about antiquing and buying things secondhand. So I'd say the way this place turns out, a lot has to do with where we go and how we acquire things.
The thing that distinguishes building this home together versus when we were living together, for example, down in New York City and in Brooklyn, is that when we lived together in the city, one of us had already one of us was moving in with the other. So one of us was kind of entering somebody else's world and entering someone else's life. And yes, that the things we're adjusting to accommodate and for it to be both of ours. But this is something that we started with a completely blank slate. So it was really a chance to say like, yes, you have all these things and I have all these things, but this is how they're gonna really come together now from zero to create like what truly our home together looks like versus my home with a little like sprinkles of Nick or Nick's home and sprinkles of me. It's truly, I think, us coming together.
Yeah, we lived in the city for 12, 13 years, and I don't know, for some reason, everything always felt temporary there to me because you never know what's gonna happen when your rent goes up, or when you sign your next lease or whatever. So yeah, this place, it's a mix of both of us, and it's nice to see it slowly evolve as we bring more things into it. So it'll be somewhere totally different a year from now and 2 years from now than it is right now. So
well, even just in the last year or so, like I said, we worked with this TV show and this design team to outfit this space, and that was so essential. It really helped us see how you can make this space work. But we've already moved stuff around like 2 or 3 times since then because it is such a huge space and it is so different, and we're learning how to live in it, all the time. So I think that it's so big and flexible in that way that we're gonna keep kind of seeing how we need it to work for us, and it's gonna be able to keep evolving.
that's the piano area. Let's go over and check out the ultimate collection of Blue Boys and / bar area.
So when we have friends over, we can make drinks. We have a great little kind of incense station kind of going on here because obviously we are in a former church. So you'll see throughout our home, there are kind of these ecclesiastical touches that just kind of harken to what this building used to be. So from here though, you can see, I'm especially proud, I believe I'm up to like 36 Blue Boys. These are reproduction works. Blue Boy was originally painted by Thomas Gainsborough, and the original is in the collection of the Huntington Library in California. I have yet to see it in person.
I've seen it in person.
But again, it's just one of those things where there was a time, this painting captivated the world. It was really regarded as one of the most successful paintings ever produced. Like these beautiful colors, the positioning, everything about it was celebrated. And people wanted to recognize that they knew that, so they wanted these in their home. And it's just crazy to me that like there are plates and there are porcelain pieces and there are statuettes. One of those is a music box. Like
stitching.
Yeah,
knitting.
Just the incredible variety is just nuts. Like, can you imagine someone in like the 1960s just like chilling in their living room working on this like needlework while they like decided to welcome Blue Boy into their home? Like, it's crazy to me. As if just having Blue Boy looking down on you was not already a special experience.
Try sleeping with 20 of them staring at you.
This is like, we call this kind of the sleeping loft. It's only like 2 or 3 steps up from the main level of the sanctuary, but it's this raised area. This would have been like the choir loft. This would have been where the choir or an organ would have been with the congregation behind, on that side. So this is all behind you. So this is what we've created as like our sleeping area. So as you're sitting here trying to like fall into slumber, you have this beautiful collection of 35, 36 Blue Boys to gaze down, talk to you about how your day went, listen to all your troubles. It's pretty special.
The real one's more creepy though, because it kind of follows you. The eyes follow you around the room a little bit.
Exactly.
These not so much.
Yeah. But in this area too, you still have the vestiges of what Nick was saying before about my kind of period of time when I was collecting couches. So this couch, which has a matching chair, I love. It's this like fun kind of 60s vintage pattern, but we don't really have a place for it anymore. But it's just too good to get rid of. So we're just kind of hanging on to it in this area for a little bit longer while we kind of figure out maybe if it makes sense elsewhere. The bed, everything on our bed is by this great new company that I just learned about called Greenrow. That it's one of those things where it's like when we do have to buy new, because not everything is vintage, a lot of it is, but not every single thing. It's great when we can find companies that kind of have that same approach to like craftsmanship and longevity, and Greenrow definitely does. So that's what we have for like our bedding and our nightstand and our great little lamp, but then complemented by like fun little touches like this kind of tile coaster from Fireclay, which is a really great company out of California. And then just some more like vintage, like depression glass, just like little bits of like new mixed with old, just tell such a layered, beautiful story. So that's the sleeping loft. We looked at the kind of bar area, which is just kind of like a nice little kind of loungy moment with this beautiful kind of East Lake style chaise lounge here. Just kind of is like a beautiful little moment.
I do want to point out my collection because these things are contagious, so it's kind of an arms race. So I decided to start collecting ashtrays. We got this one in Montreal. Yeah, Montreal. I don't know much about it, just looks nice.
I will show you one of the things that is great about an old house, of course, is learning the history, not only of the house, but the community also. And we were kind of surprised that even though our now house was originally the first church of Granville, that was its name. It was, like we said, the congregation established in 1782, the building in 1793. We went to our local historical society, we asked our town historian, and found little to nothing, surprisingly, for what seems like a really significant building in the community. But then, actually, an old preservation professor of mine had suggested, like, well, you should just check your local library. They might have a local history section. So we did, and our local library, the Pember, had this great compendium, I guess.
This book's amazing. It's 100 years of the church?
Yeah.
100-year history. It's basically a chronicle of failures and infighting.
It's
and
so good.
committees put together to investigate people dancing and stuff like that. So
the town newspaper, the Granville Sentinel, when the congregation finally dissolved, like the congregation finally like came to an end, they did like a year-long retrospective in the town paper based on the church records. And it's just so hilarious to read back because it's like, we obviously when we're looking at it, we're interested about kind of like the color that it brings to the people behind the church. But initially I was looking at it in the hopes it would talk a bit about the building, like, you know, when they started building, design choices in the 1860s when they started to renovate. But there's really nothing about that.
It's mostly about how they never have any money and they're
it's much more about
constantly
the people
making promises they can't keep.
Yeah, and the infighting. But it's the kind of thing that, like, as ridiculous as it might seem now, kind of with the benefit of time, it is still an incredibly valuable document to us because it tells us like the people who really then you can walk like a block down from our church and the cemetery that used to be affiliated with this church, half the names that you see in this document, like they're there in that cemetery. Like the connection to the earliest days of this town are really visceral and palpable. It's really powerful.
Over here, this is sort of my work area and my art wall, which is kind of a mixture of things. We've got some Soviet art, a pop art, some camera posters, but mostly everything else here is done by a guy from one of my favorite bands, probably forever. They're called Every Time I Die. They're broken up now, but shout out to Jordan Buckley, hardcore scene band, very DIY, and so he does a lot of art. And these are tour posters over here. Yeah, so I've been seeing them since I was a teenager, basically, and this is kind of a reminder of that. Echoing the religious nature of everything, I wanted to get a sensor for a while so we could do, various rituals and things.
Sure.
But yeah, we found this when we were in Ecuador, like was mentioned, we were at we had a guide taking us around, and we were at a market.
Like an open air market, yeah.
In Quito, where people just like forge things and make things themselves. We found this in a guy had a booth with all brass stuff in it, and that was just there right in front of us. So
yeah,
it's kind of meant to be. I don't know.
Yeah, we found that like day one, like an hour into the tour.
Yeah, it was like the first thing.
Yeah, and
felt
then
a little
just
too good to be true.
Hope we could get it home.
So this desk came from Cheap Old Houses with the show.
This is the heaviest piece of furniture.
It was originally up here where the bed area is now. That was a work area. We moved it down here. We had to wait a while because it's unbelievably heavy. We had to have we paid I think 2 guys to come in here and help me move it.
Yeah.
And it took all three or four of us to move it, but
it's like the
it's
definition
like a two-sided
they don't make it like they used to anymore. It's like so well made. It's like the thickest wood.
Yeah, it'll be here long after I'm dead. Yeah, but we've got that. It's kind of sparse right now because it's huge. I don't have a lot of stuff to put on it. This is the first entry in the ashtray collection. Tommy's Taxi Service. I don't know if that was a real place or ironic or what.
But well, at the time, I got it for you because at the time we had our cat Tom, and I don't know, it just felt like silly and like connected. So I was like, oh, why not?
Yeah. So standing ashtray. Very cool.
We mentioned my dad, in the vestibule, we mentioned that my dad does stained glass and created that transom piece. My mother is a quilter, and so this is not a dog bed because we don't own a dog yet. This is just a big floor pillow that adds like places that people can sit and relax and lounge. And so my mother created this original quilt cover for it for me. So again, it's like everything like connects us kind of back to like some memory or someone that's important to us. But I love this. Like I can't imagine like my mom, Deb Peña, like her little fingers like doing all these like tiny little squares, but she just does them like so carefully and expertly. It's just like, it's such a beautiful thing. I'll have it for forever. And this is actually, the quilt on the couch is also by my mom. If there's a quilt, Deb Peña made it, because at this point, like, I see vintage quilts sometimes and they're so beautiful, but I feel like I'd be like cheating on her craft if I were to get it from anyone else. So if there's a quilt, it's by her.
My advice to others when buying their first home would have to be simple. Just have patience, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm a lot more patient person after we were here than I was before. So it took a lot of faith that things would turn out, and it looked like a lot of times like they weren't going to turn out. So simple virtue from me.
And for me, advice that I would give someone looking to buy their first home, I think that Nick's right. Patience is so key, because yes, we could have bought so many other just like perfectly lovely homes along the way. But, and obviously just because we buy this home doesn't mean it'll be the only home we ever own. I mean, probably, I can't imagine ever leaving after all the blood, sweat, and tears. But just feeling like, you know, giving it time and really connecting with the home. And also like not being, like taking a bit of a gamble on yourself. I mean, we lived in an apartment. We were not big DIY people, and by no means have we done this renovation ourselves, by no means. But still being able to see that this needed so much work, and taking like, having a little faith in ourselves that we could be patient and we could do it and we could be a part of the process of making it happen was really important, because now this incredible building has a new chance at life, and we have this incredibly unique space. And it, like Nick said, it almost fell through 100 times, and it could have not happened, but I think the fact that we committed to it has really paid off. So I would say to somebody else looking to buy their first home, just really like have confidence in what you can do, and maybe like don't sell yourself short on like a dream project. It could happen.
Moving next door from the work area, this is the library area. Some of the stuff here was from the show as well. This, my favorite, this Chesterfield's my favorite because I've always wanted one. And the show gave us one. It came from, what's the store called?
It's called The Old 1840. It's a vintage shop also here in Granville. The owner, Goliath, is the nicest guy. And we've been talking to him about coming and doing some more patching, but just like, no, I don't think we ever even uttered the word Chesterfield to anyone. So the fact that this happened was like pure, like just fate.
Yeah. And we've got a bookshelf over here, which is massive, but still looks kind of small when you put it in here.
You want to point out some of the books, like your New York collection or the Moby Dick you just got?
Yeah, the interesting stuff's down here. Trying to buy old books. Let's start an old book collection, which, yeah, we got Moby Dick. We got this volumes of history of New York. We got a Adirondack history, because we live 10 minutes from Adirondack Park.
The Blue Line?
Yes, the Blue Line. Well, those books all came from, what's the bookstore called? It's in Hebron, New York.
Wilson Homestead, Bookshop and Antiques.
Collection of art and photo books. A very cool globe, which also came from the show.
Well, talk through some of the books. Like, what are some of the ones that you like?
What are some of the ones
I
I
tried to
like?
put out the ones that I know you like. Tillman's I put on the table. No, not Tillman's, right? I don't know. Anyway, I put the ones I thought you would like. But do whatever you want. Pick them up and handle them. Well, it's funny because it's like I did not know Wolfgang Tillmans until I met Nick, but now I love his work as well. And it's funny.
German.
Yeah. And it's funny because, well, maybe it's not funny, but the way that we chose to display Nick's photos in the vestibule with just these like T-pins and binder clips, super simple to allow you to have these like really big pieces, is how Tillmans displays his stuff. I mean, that's how we thought to do it.
Yeah. And he also likes lots of different things. What do you call it? Typologies.
What do you mean?
Well, we're talking about how you got Blue Boys. Lots of the same thing repeated over and over again, which is something I think repeated around this room.
Yeah.
Actually, this is the Beschers. They do the same thing, so kind of all. Let me find one. They do typologies too, so repetition of the same kind of structures over and over again. It's kind of a motif that
Apparently we both do.
is going around, I guess.
Yeah. Another vintage.
Oh yeah, ashtray number 3.
Is that one also from Montreal? Did we get those together?
I think so.
Yeah, that one might also be from Montreal.
Another Montreal ashtray.
Yeah.
I think that's all of them.
Next to the library is this pool table that it's funny that we have the piano now because, again, it's a huge space, so there's a challenge in finding ways to fill it. And so kind of having this games area was one solution that the designer for Who's Afraid of a Cheap Old House came up with. And as she told us, she was talking to the production team and said she wanted something big and it would either be a pool table or a piano. And production was like, a piano sounds like an absolute nightmare. Let's just do a pool table. So that's why we ended up with a pool table. And then obviously the piano happened anyway.
Yeah. People come over, they play it, it's fun.
But then really kind of the last little corner of the house is just like kind of bringing you back full circle to the kitchen. It's just this little kind of breakfast table, kind of breakfast nook, where we also kind of have like the concentration of the various pieces of kind of ecclesiastical art that we've collected over time. Again, almost all of them connecting back to a memory or a moment of something that we did together. For example, like this here is the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Montreal that I got when Nick and I and his mother went on a trip to Montreal together. So it's like, I look at that and I remember that, in addition to kind of filling this thematic kind of purpose for us. Or like this cross, this kind of, with this hyper reflective kind of metallic gold. I got this in Mexico when I was on a trip with one of my best friends from down in the city. So it's like, whenever I see this, I remember that really incredible trip and traveling with her. So everything kind of like has layers to it.
And this painting on the wall over here.
Go for it.
Where'd we get it?
Buffalo.
Yeah, we got this in Buffalo. It's like a Garden of Eden, good and evil type thing. It's
Nick was
very strange, and it's stranger the closer you get to it.
We were in Buffalo because Nick wanted to go to a hardcore show, and I wanted to go to Buffalo, but I didn't want to go to the show. So I was like, well, you go to your show, and I'll just antique while you do that. So I was at this random antique shop in Buffalo, whose name escapes me, and I saw this insane piece of art that's like, it's kind of like Hieronymus Bosch ridiculousness-ish, but like it's not quite that fantastical, but it is crazy. Like the faces on these animals are just nuts. And so I sent him a big picture and then some close-ups, and he was just like, yes, absolutely. Like, why are you even questioning it?
Yeah, and mainly it's very large, so
yeah, and
we're in desperate need of large things.
It takes up a lot of beautiful real estate on the wall, so it's
laughing are those hyenas?
I guess, I don't even know. But it's just like this lion's face kind of looks like a person, and like, I think this is a dog. Like, that's not a dog's face. What's even going on here? Like, it's just such a bizarre piece that it's kind of hilarious to have.
Yeah, strange and cool.
When we walked in, the entire ceiling was covered with like popcorn.
The whole walls, the ceiling, everything had like crazy thick, goopy, like popcorn wall stuff on it. And then I think
but you could see, like, there were a couple of places where, because the building hadn't been climate controlled for like decades, so there was cracking and peeling and things were starting to fall apart.
Yeah, lots of little pieces were falling off. And then I think one day people were over here for the show and we saw like lines and letters and stuff. And
like you could
we realized that there was something underneath it.
Just like the glimpses, like kind of the suggestion that there's something, and it was like too linear to just be a random, like, color fluctuation or something. It was clearly like an intentional line or something. Yeah. And so we had the hope that there would be something lovely underneath all that terrible, terrible popcorn. But it was really a risk because the church had been home to various congregations with various beliefs over time, and how those things are manifested in their art, like, we don't know. So you could have uncovered it and had something very specific to one denomination or another. And the fact that you have this just beautiful, beautiful geometric pattern with, still as faded as it is, this kind of like ruinous like quality to it, it still has a lot of detail intact, is incredible.
And that was probably the single most time consuming part of
the
renovations that happened, because It was just a couple guys up there scraping for God knows how long.
Yeah, just like because we didn't have the ability to do like an actual like conservation treatment and approach to like testing like paints and stuff like that. You know, our directive was just do no harm, like as long just like water and manual just scraping like softly and carefully, and whatever comes. And that's why you can see there's still a lot of places where there's patchy and things like that. But I think I can't imagine. I mean, we'll probably just leave it like this. I mean, one could probably spend tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars to have an artisan come in and repaint it, but like this,
we like it. It's got this ruinous, weathered look, and it kind of contrasts well with the clean wall. So it's kind of framed a little bit. So I think it works.
Yeah, for sure. And then you see like just the two little areas where you see these very obvious like white patches. Those are just where we had the most water damage that just had to be fully removed from water damage and mold remediation. So that's what those two kind of splotchy parts are. But it's possible that the paint continues even further down, but it was just like, we can preserve that for later. Like we could always down the road, if we wanted to, continue to explore and kind of peel back layers. But for now, it's just kind of like encapsulating what's there and like celebrating what we can.
And again, just amazing that there's no documentation of what it actually looked like in here.
Yeah. Especially this, because very likely in the 1790s when this building was built, this congregation was very like Spartan, very like, you know, simple country church. Like I have to say, it's probably unlikely that this is from that era. It's probably from this like mid 1800s when you see the windows. Like these windows are not necessarily original. They likely came in the 1860s. Some of you can still see ghosting actually on the rear of the facade. You can see ghosting of the original, well, what is likely would have been original, just squared off windows. On the front facade, we have some like details around the windows that add a little bit of flourish. So it's likely that this was added later. So it's crazy that no one seems to have mentioned, you know, oh, such and such was here for the last month doing the ceiling. It's just crazy that like no one documented that, but
that we know of.
Yeah, maybe, who knows? It could. We still have time. We could find some document. It could happen. But yeah, our ceiling is really, you know, sit on the couch, gaze up. You always kind of find a new little detail. It's really beautiful. I think to me, home is, I don't think it's an easy answer. I think that it evolves over time. I think that it, to me right now, means expression, self-expression, because it's really giving us a chance to play around and explore and kind of define like our vision of home for ourselves. So for me right now, home is like the place that I feel like I can be the most myself and I can really express myself fully.
Definition of home to me is consistency and stability. And a place to make your last stand, basically.
Oh my God, that sounds so silly.
Yeah, I'm defining it against living in the city, but home is just a place where you can kind of stretch out and indulge parts of yourself that maybe you couldn't before, because you feel like you have a place that's yours.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.